The first golden rays of dawn struggled to pierce the perpetual morning gloom of the Rosewood Cafe, but inside, Elara Vance moved with a practiced grace that defied her quiet weariness. Her hands, calloused but gentle, navigated steaming mugs and clattering plates across worn wooden tables. Each customer received a polite, almost imperceptible smile, a brief flicker of warmth in her tired eyes. Elara knew the morning crowd better than they knew themselves. Mrs. Gable's extra hot latte, Mr. Henderson's burnt toast, the perpetually late student who always ordered the cheapest black coffee. She watched them, a habit born of necessity and a quiet curiosity about the lives swirling around her own. The day stretched long before her, a familiar, demanding rhythm already setting in. Long before the cafe stirred, Elara's day had begun in the quiet chill of her modest home. The kitchen table, usually a place for hurried breakfasts, was now a battleground of paper. Stacked high were hospital bills, stark white rectangles demanding attention, their numbers a cruel testament to her mother Eleanor's ongoing medical needs. Elara's brow furrowed, a faint line of worry deepening as she traced the alarming sums. Her gaze then drifted to the small, cluttered desk in the corner, where a well-thumbed textbook lay open. It belonged to Leo, her younger brother, whose dreams of university were as fragile as the paper these bills were printed on. She saw his bright future, a silent promise she was determined to keep, no matter the cost. The weight of it all pressed down, but beneath it, a stubborn ember of hope still glowed. Back at the Rosewood, the mid-morning lull settled in, a brief, comfortable pause in the relentless pace. Elara moved between familiar faces, the air filled with the comforting smell of freshly brewed coffee and the low hum of friendly conversation. "Refill for you, Mr. Davies?" she asked, her voice soft but clear, as she topped off a mug for a regular customer. He nodded, smiling, engrossed in his newspaper. The gentle clatter of cutlery, the soft murmur of voices, the occasional burst of laughter. It was the usual symphony of the cafe, a backdrop of normalcy that had, for so long, defined the boundaries of Elara's world. It was a world of small, predictable comforts, soon to be unexpectedly disrupted. The heavy oak door of the Rosewood Cafe swung open, admitting a man who was undeniably out of place. He was distinguished, his simple, well-tailored suit speaking of quiet wealth rather than ostentation. Arthur Thorne, though Elara did not yet know his name, carried himself with an air of immense preoccupation, his eyes scanning the cozy room not with curiosity, but with a strained, almost desperate intensity. He clutched a sleek leather briefcase as if it contained the weight of the world, choosing a secluded corner table, far from the bustling counter. His arrival was not boisterous, yet it carried an unsettling energy, a subtle ripple in the cafe's calm waters that Elara, ever observant, immediately noticed. Arthur Thorne settled into his chair, but his body remained rigid, his mind a whirlwind of numbers and legal jargon. He unlatched his briefcase, revealing not the casual items of a cafe patron, but thick, imposing legal documents, their pages filled with dense text. Millions. That was the figure dancing, or rather clawing, at the edges of his consciousness. Millions at stake, not just for his company, Thorne Industries, but for the thousands of employees whose livelihoods depended on this single, monumental deal. Failure was not an option, yet the constant gnawing fear of it consumed him. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple, the weight of his responsibilities a crushing burden. Elara approached Arthur's table, her movements fluid and professional. "Good morning," she offered, her smile a practiced warm gesture, placing a menu and a freshly poured cup of coffee before him. "Can I get you anything else?" Arthur merely grunted, his eyes already fixed on the documents, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm on the tabletop. Yet, as she set down the steaming mug, Elara noticed it, a faint tremor in his hands, not the gentle shake of age, but a deep, almost violent vibration born of profound pressure. It was a detail most would miss, but Elara's life had taught her to read the subtle signs of human struggle, a silent language spoken in the minutiae. As the morning progressed, Elara's gaze, despite her other duties, kept drifting back to the man in the corner. He remained immersed in his papers, a stark, almost theatrical contrast to the cafe's relaxed atmosphere. She served a slice of apple pie to an elderly couple, wiped down the counter, and refilled another coffee, but her eyes, quick and darting, would always return to Arthur Thorne. He hadn't touched his coffee, his posture unchanged, a statue of intense concentration amidst the gentle ebb and flow of cafe life. A quiet sense of unease began to settle within Elara, a feeling that something significant was unfolding at that secluded table, something far removed from the usual morning rush. Elara approached Arthur's table once more, coffee pot in hand, to offer a refill. His cup, still full, signaled his deep absorption. As she reached forward, her eyes, accustomed to scanning fine print on bills and contracts, inadvertently snagged on a particular line in the document spread before him. It was a small line, almost insignificant, buried deep within a dense paragraph of legal jargon. But to Elara, whose existence revolved around the precise wording of financial obligations, it screamed an inconsistency, a glaring anomaly. Her breath caught, the coffee pot hovering, her mind instantly flagging the clause as profoundly out of place, a critical error waiting to be discovered. The coffee pot remained suspended, forgotten. Elara's mind raced, a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. Speak up? Interrupt this important, stressed man? The potential consequences flashed before her. A brusque dismissal, a reprimand from her manager for interfering, perhaps even losing her job. Her family's faces, her mother's medical bills, Leo's textbooks. They all swam before her eyes, pressing down with the weight of her responsibilities. Yet, the small, quiet voice of her integrity, honed by years of facing hardship head-on, pushed back. This wasn't just a mistake. It felt like a disaster waiting to happen. The fear was palpable, but so too was a burgeoning sense of duty, a moral obligation she couldn't easily ignore. Elara stood a few tables away from Arthur Thorne, her coffee pot held steady, yet her hands trembled almost imperceptibly. A deep, fortifying breath filled her lungs, a silent prayer for courage. Her mind raced, rehearsing the words, trying to find a way to approach the formidable man without sounding presumptuous, without risking her job. She was just a waitress after all, and he, clearly, was a man of immense consequence. The thought of her mother's medical bills, of Leo's dreams, flashed before her eyes, a heavy weight that suddenly felt lighter, buoyed by an even heavier sense of moral obligation. Her jaw subtly clenched. She had to speak. The wrongness of that tiny clause, the sheer magnitude of its potential impact, demanded it. With a practiced, if slightly more rigid, grace, Elara approached Arthur's table, setting down a fresh plate of eggs and toast. The aroma of a perfectly cooked breakfast wafted up, but Arthur barely registered it, his gaze still fixed on the documents. Elara leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with a nervousness she fought to conceal. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her eyes briefly flicking to the open briefcase. I hope you don't mind, but I couldn't help but notice something unusual in your papers. A small detail, perhaps." Arthur looked up, his brow furrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing his features at the interruption. Arthur Thorne, a man accustomed to deference, offered a dismissive wave of his hand. "Thank you, but I assure you, everything is quite in order." Elara's heart sank, a wave of foolishness washing over her. She had overstepped, just as she feared. But then, the image of his earlier, frantic energy, the white-knuckled grip on the papers, solidified her resolve. "It's just that," she insisted, her voice gaining a quiet firmness. "I've seen many contracts, many bills, and this particular wording, it seemed out of place." Arthur, about to turn back to his work, paused. Her persistence, and the unexpected specificity of her phrasing, piqued his curiosity. He looked at her again, truly looking this time. "Out of place, you say? What exactly are you referring to?" Arthur, with a sigh that still held an edge of impatience, pushed the weighty document across the table. "Show me." Elara carefully reached for it, her fingers brushing the crisp, expensive paper. Her eyes scanned the dense legal jargon, quickly finding the section. With a steady, slender finger, she traced a specific, obscure line of text buried deep within the fine print, a clause almost designed to be overlooked. Arthur's gaze, initially skeptical, followed her finger, his expression beginning to shift from mild annoyance to something more intense. The small, almost imperceptible detail lay exposed. Arthur Thorne leaned closer, his eyes narrowing as he read the clause Elara indicated. A long, tense silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant clatter of dishes. He reread the line, then the paragraph, then the entire section. His initial skepticism melted away, replaced by an intense, almost frantic concentration. Elara watched him, her own heart pounding, as the color slowly drained from his face. His hands, which had been resting casually on the table, gripped the document, knuckles turning white. The full, devastating weight of the words, the magnitude of the error she had pinpointed, began to sink into his formidable mind. The cafe's ambient hum faded, replaced by the thundering realization in Arthur's ears. In Arthur's mind, a catastrophic cascade of images unfolded. He saw the headlines: Thorne Industries crumbles due to oversight. He felt the cold dread of thousands of employees receiving termination notices, their livelihoods shattered. Millions, perhaps billions, in corporate value evaporated, entire divisions collapsing. The deal, the one he had spent months meticulously negotiating, the one that was supposed to secure his company's future, would have been its undoing. His breath hitched, a silent gasp of terror, quickly followed by an overwhelming flood of relief so profound it left him dizzy. A single tear, unbidden, pricked at the corner of his eye. This quiet waitress, this unassuming woman, had just saved his empire, his legacy, and the future of countless families. Slowly, Arthur lowered the papers, his earlier stress replaced by an expression of profound awe and humility. He looked at Elara, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a server, but as a savior. The bustling cafe faded into the background. His voice, when it came, was soft, almost reverent, utterly devoid of its previous brusqueness. "What is your name?" he asked, the words carrying the weight of a monumental debt, a new chapter opening in his life. He extended his hand, not in professional formality, but in a gesture of genuine, heartfelt gratitude. Elara, slightly startled by the sudden shift in his demeanor, felt a blush creep up her neck. She took his hand, her own feeling small and calloused in his firm grip. "Elara," she replied, her voice still quiet, almost shy. She tried to downplay her actions, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. "It was just a detail, sir. Anyone might have noticed it." Arthur, however, merely offered a knowing smile. He saw the humility, the integrity, and the sharp mind behind her words. His own mind, ever the strategist, was already racing, formulating plans far beyond a simple thank you. Arthur Thorne slowly pushed his chair back from the small cafe table. The legal documents, once a heavy burden, now felt like a featherweight in his briefcase, securely clasped. His earlier frantic energy had been replaced by a quiet, almost reverent calm. He reached into his wallet, pulling out a crisp $100 bill, far more than the modest cost of his coffee and uneaten eggs. Placing it beneath the saucer, he looked up, his gaze finding Elara across the bustling room. Their eyes met, and in that moment, no words were needed. His had been a world of cutthroat deals and cold calculations, yet this young woman, with her quiet integrity, had saved him from an abyss. A subtle, appreciative nod passed between them. Arthur felt a profound shift within him, a silent promise forming. This act of kindness would not go unrewarded. He turned, the subtle click of his briefcase echoing his renewed purpose, and walked out, leaving Elara to wonder at the lingering warmth of his gaze. The cafe's hum returned, but for Elara, the air around that table still thrummed with unspoken significance. Elara watched him go, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over her. Had she truly just saved a man from financial ruin? The thought felt too grand, too important for her small, ordinary life. As she moved to clear Arthur's table, her fingers brushed against the generous tip. Her eyes widened slightly. It was more than she made in a full shift. Across the room, Maria, another waitress, nudged David, the barista. "Did you see that?" she whispered, eyes darting to Elara. "That man was intense, and he left quite the thank you." David shrugged, but a flicker of curiosity crossed his face. Elara, however, was lost in her own thoughts. She felt foolish, yet undeniably proud. A strange, unfamiliar warmth settled in her chest, a faint spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, her small act had made a difference beyond the immediate. The whispers of her colleagues were distant, a gentle hum against the louder questions in her own mind. Later that evening, Elara finally stumbled through the door of her modest home, every muscle aching from the long shift. The day's events replayed in her mind like a strange, vivid dream. She kicked off her worn shoes and collapsed onto her bed, the quiet darkness of her room a welcome embrace. The weight of the world, the bills, her mother's health, Leo's education, it all still pressed down, a familiar, heavy blanket. Yet, tonight, something felt different. A tiny, defiant spark flickered within her, a nascent sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. It was a quiet satisfaction, a wonder at the unforeseen ripple her simple honesty might create. She closed her eyes, a small, unbidden smile gracing her lips, not yet knowing the profound changes that were already in motion, speeding towards her. Days later, the familiar exhaustion weighed on Elara as she unlocked the door to her modest home. The scent of stale air and faint hope greeted her. On the small, worn kitchen table, a single, elegant envelope lay in stark contrast to the usual clutter of bills and grocery lists. It was thick, heavier than a standard letter, and embossed with a seal she didn't recognize, a stylized T intertwined with a soaring eagle. Her brow furrowed. Who would send such an official-looking missive to her? Her tired mind, usually quick to dismiss anything out of the ordinary, found itself piqued by this unexpected mystery. She picked it up, feeling the quality of the paper, a faint unease mingling with a burgeoning curiosity. With hesitant fingers, Elara tore open the seal. Inside, a letter from Thorne Industries, signed by Arthur Thorne himself, unfolded a destiny she could scarcely comprehend. Her eyes, still weary from her shift, scanned the words, then scanned them again, disbelieving. Full scholarship for Leo at the university of his choice. All of Eleanor's outstanding medical expenses, paid in full, with ongoing care covered. And for her, Elara Vance, an offer for a position as a junior analyst within Thorne Industries, specifically citing her exceptional observational skills and keen intellect. The words blurred, then sharpened, then blurred again as the sheer magnitude of it all began to sink in. This wasn't just a tip. It was an entire future, laid out before her, eradicating every single worry that had plagued her for years. The dam broke. A choked sob escaped Elara's throat, quickly followed by another, and then a torrent of tears. They streamed down her face, hot and unchecked, soaking the elegant paper in her trembling hands. She collapsed onto the nearest kitchen chair, the letter still clutched, her body shaking with an overwhelming release. Years of silent struggle, of late nights and early mornings, of medical bills and tuition worries, dissolved in that moment. The crushing weight that had pressed down on her spirit for so long simply lifted. It was a liberation so profound, so unexpected, that it felt almost like a dream. Gratitude, disbelief, and a profound, aching joy washed over her, leaving her utterly breathless. Meanwhile, in his gleaming corporate office, Arthur Thorne conducted a meeting with a demeanor noticeably calmer, more thoughtful than before. His gaze, once perpetually strained, now held a reflective depth. He listened intently to his team, encouraging junior members to voice their opinions, a subtle shift in his leadership style. Sometimes, he mused, leaning back in his chair, the most crucial details are overlooked by those too close to the forest. It often takes an outsider, with fresh eyes, to spot the anomaly. He didn't name Elara, but the quiet, knowing smile that played on his lips was a testament to the unexpected wisdom he had gained from a simple waitress, forever changing his approach to business and to life. A few days later, Elara stood outside the imposing glass doors of the Thorne Industries building, dressed in a borrowed but impeccably tailored suit. A knot of nervousness tightened in her stomach. This was it, her first step into a new life. Inside, she was led to an interview room. Though Arthur Thorne himself only made a brief, respectful appearance to introduce her to the HR director, Elara's articulate responses and her uncanny ability to connect seemingly disparate pieces of information impressed everyone. Her intelligence, honed by years of keen observation and problem-solving in her personal life, shone brightly in this new professional setting, validating Arthur's faith in her. The harsh, sterile scent of the hospital room had softened, replaced by the faint aroma of fresh flowers. Eleanor Vance, once frail and constantly worried, now sat upright in her bed, a genuine, unburdened smile gracing her lips as she chatted with a nurse. Her eyes, once clouded with pain and exhaustion, sparkled with renewed life. Elara watched her mother from the doorway, a profound sense of peace settling over her. Later, Elara found Leo Vance hunched over a textbook on a sprawling university campus, not in their cramped kitchen. His brow, once furrowed with the weight of unfulfilled ambition, was now smooth with focused determination. He looked up, his youthful face alight. "Elara, I think I've finally cracked this theorem," she beamed, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "I know you will, Leo," she responded, her voice thick with emotion. "I always knew." Within the sleek, glass-walled offices of Thorne Industries, Elara Vance was no longer the quiet waitress. She was a respected analyst, her keen observational skills now a celebrated asset. In a bustling morning meeting, she confidently stood before a large screen, presenting a complex market analysis. "Our competitor's latest move," she explained, her voice clear and articulate, "isn't about market share, but about supply chain leverage. If we pivot our procurement now, we can preempt their next quarter's push." Colleagues, initially wary of the new hire from an unconventional background, listened intently, nodding in agreement. Her manager, a stern but fair woman, simply offered a concise, "Excellent insight, Elara. Pursue that." Elara, though still modest, felt a quiet hum of satisfaction. She was not just observing, she was contributing, shaping, and excelling. One quiet afternoon, Elara found herself walking down the familiar street toward the Rosewood Cafe. She wore a smart tailored blazer, but her step was as light and unassuming as ever. Inside, the comforting aroma of coffee and baked goods enveloped her, a scent that had once defined her entire world. "Elara?" a familiar voice gasped, and Maria, her former colleague, rushed over. Hugs were exchanged, old stories chuckled over. Elara even found herself behind the counter for a moment, automatically wiping down the espresso machine. "Old habits die hard, eh?" she laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. She wasn't just visiting. She was reconnecting, remembering where she came from, her humility still firmly rooted in her past. "It's good to be back, even if it's just for a coffee," she told Maria, a soft smile on her face. Across Maple Street, whispers of Elara's story had become a quiet legend. "Remember that waitress from Rosewood?" one patron might say to another. "The one who saved Thorne Industries." The story wasn't sensationalized, but it resonated. People began to pay more attention, not just to the grand gestures, but to the small details, the quiet observations. A shop owner might double-check a delivery manifest. A neighbor might notice a subtle change in a friend's demeanor. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the town's collective consciousness. A quiet ripple of inspiration, proving that integrity and a keen eye truly mattered, even in the most unexpected places. Elara Vance's journey was a testament to the profound power of one. From the quiet struggle of a waitress burdened by circumstance, she had ascended to a respected professional, her family thriving, her spirit unbroken. Arthur Thorne, the titan of industry, had found humility and a renewed purpose, forever changed by the wisdom of an unexpected source. Their story became a quiet anthem, a reminder that the greatest transformations often begin not with booming pronouncements or grand designs, but with the quietest acts of courage, the keenest observation, and the unwavering integrity of a single individual. It transformed not just lives, but entire outlooks, proving that sometimes the most unseen detail holds the greatest power.